Hey there you guys, this is Crystal and today I'm going to talk a little bit about how I take notes when I'm brainstorming a story. So the first thing I do, and the most important thing, is I find a composition book to take notes in. Something like this. This one is gorgeous, isn't it? Oh my gosh. So I'm actually pretty picky about my composition books. They absolutely, positively have to be colored ruled. I don't know why. I don't like taking notes in wide ruled. Maybe because I think I feel like I'm wasting space. And also if I have a lot of characters, I want all the characters listed on one page and I want them in one line. And I get kind of picky about that. So the next thing I do is choose a pen. This is also really important because I'm also very picky about the kind of pen that I draft my stories in. So lately, my pen of choice has been this Zebra. I don't know how well you can see the logo, but it is a Zebra F301 pen. I have these in black ink and I have them in blue. I like these pens because they make my handwriting look nice, and when my handwriting looks nice, my notes are easier to read, and that's really important when you're taking notes by hand. So the notes I'm going to be using as an example today are for my current project. It is called Whisper. It is a paranormal, retelling, kind of something. And it is in this ugly notebook. So I put this label up here so I can put the name of the stories that are in here, because a lot of times I tag team and triple team stories in a composition book. Again, that's because I don't want to waste a lot of space. So usually what I'll do is I'll skip a few pages when I'm completely done, and then I would just use my pen to hold my spot. And I don't know when I got this notebook. I've had the story idea in my head for like 4 years. And so I guess at the time I thought this notebook was fine. Now I absolutely hate it. And also I can tell it's a long time because this first page are notes that are written in a pencil. And I don't do notes in pencils anymore because this is like super faded. And when things are super faded, they're hard to read. So this story actually has quite a few pages of notes. So this amount of notes is actually quite abnormal for me, and this is because I have rewritten these notes a total of 3 times. They're only in this particular notebook 2 times. Also, I ripped a page out at some point, so there's a tear right here from where I ripped a couple pages out. Probably my original list of characters. I always make a list of characters so that I can do a quick reference to somebody's first name or somebody's last name. I remember when I bought these too. I got a blue one and a green one that are also plain like this. Those don't bother me as much. I think it's just this beige. I have something against the color beige. But anyway, for the second incarnation of this story, because I had the original idea and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't pull this off. And I just kind of felt intimidated. And so I had changed some things, and so I switched notebooks. And then I realized that wasn't going to work, and I did need to stick with my original idea because I just needed to have more faith in myself and more confidence. And so I switched back to this notebook. Just in case I wanted any of my old notes, and I have not. The funny thing about me taking all these notes is that I literally don't really look at most of them again. I jot down scene ideas and snippets of dialogue, and if it's that important, I'll actually type it into my draft, because I keep a mini outline and miscellaneous notes in the bottom of my draft that I'm working on, and that's where all the really important stuff goes as far as plot and stuff. So just to show you, this is how many notes I had taken before. There was a corporate office setting, and so I watched The Ides of March with George Clooney and Ryan Gosling. That's really good. Not usually my typical kind of movie, but my brother recommended it kind of so I could just get a little bit more comfortable, feel like I wasn't going in completely blind with the whole office setting. I know The Ides of March is a political themed kind of movie, but I was like, office politics, politics. Even though the office politics are an extremely minor point in the story, I just thought it would make me feel better, and it did help a lot. But none of these notes are anything that I've used again or even looked at again, and this includes a partial outline and a whole bunch of notes. This was, like I said, this is 4.5 years ago. I used to do like questionnaires on all my characters. I do not do that now because it just didn't really like stick, you know, because it got to the point where I felt like I was procrastinating, and it got to the point where I felt like it was standing in my way. And so I'm like, I just got rid of it. So I folded the paper here to help me find my place for the new notes. So this first page is just some miscellaneous notes that, like I said, I didn't look at again. And so this is a list of characters, and it just starts with my main character, Jade Morgan Zacharias. And then get to all the minor people. And like I said, a lot of these people are not necessarily people who are going to show up in the story. A lot of times they're just people who are part of the world. Like I said, there are some minor office politics going on, and so some of these people are related to that. I don't think any of that stuff made it into the story. I had like scene ideas where like you would get to see like the competition to the business, like those guys, like, but it didn't even make it into the first draft of this story. I like having them all there because it just makes the world like more rich and like robust in my head. So on this next page, I have kind of like the setting, which I said near future, about 75 years in the future, but that's not really important. It's a metropolitan area, the Chicago area and suburbs. And then this stuff appears just like some background stuff. And then I have like what they do. It's like a corporate office. They're real estate people. I don't go too much into that because it has nothing to do with the main plot. And then I kind of have like a flow chart of like the setup, the president, the vice president. Now this is the most important part of my notes. These are my character profiles. Also, sometimes I call it character stats. This time I just say profiles and stats. And basically what I do is I start with my main character and I go through everybody who I currently have in my head. So I start up here, I have Jade, I have her hair color, her skin color, her eye color, her height, her favorite food, and like a quirk. I don't do favorite food and quirks for everybody. It just kind of like depends on the character. It just kind of like depends on the character. So like some characters I have like her mom, Eliane. So instead of like her favorite food and like a quirk, and the funny thing about the quirks is that they don't even show up in the story most of the time. It's just kind of like, this is what I do now in lieu of like interviewing the characters, because I didn't feel like interviewing them was really helping me all that much. And so I'm kind of like, I either have like a good like repertoire with the characters in my head or I don't. So to kind of prove to myself that I do have that open line of communication, I ask my characters random questions. If they can't answer the question, then they kind of get purged from the story, because I'm like, I kind of need everybody on board and everybody talking to me, even if their role is like really small. So I'll just ask her like, oh, what do you like to eat? And you know, stuff like that. So for her mom, instead of that, I did disposition and a fun fact. So for her mom disposition, I put cold, proper, and irritable. And then for fun fact, she is a former lingerie model, which is actually really kind of telling, because her dad is kind of, he has a thing for tall women and he has a thing for models. And again, that's like a minor plot point, but again, it makes the characters like really robust and well-rounded and really vivid in my head. And then as you can see, I do this for several pages until I get everybody. And then like if there's anything like that's really important to note, then I will make a separate page of like just story facts. So with my last story, I think I had a separate page of like when her family died and kind of like what was going on like in between like the past and when the story starts, basically, just so I can kind of keep my facts straight. So for this one, this doesn't show up in the story verbatim, but basically it's a timeline of her quote-unquote mental illness. In the story, the main character has misdiagnosed schizophrenia, and because like she's hearing voices, but she's not really hearing voices, she's just hearing one voice, and it's a voice that all the women in the family have been hearing for centuries. So I just kind of outlined like the different ages she was, and like when she started taking medication, and when she went into therapy, and when she first got diagnosed, and the different kind of diagnosis that she had. Like I said, all this doesn't make it into the story. This is just my way of making sure I'm consistent and that I know everything that's been going on with her, so that I can, you know, like write her better. And also it's a really good way to like have like a dialogue with your main character, is, you know, to ask them about their past and ask them about their life. And also because I do reference her past a little bit, I wanted to make sure everything was consistent and I could keep all the facts straight. So one more thing I did for this story that I don't always do, it just kind of depends on the setting. Since most of this story takes place in the corporate office building, I wanted to make sure that if I say somebody went to the main conference room and I said that they went to the right, I don't always say that, but it's just a way to make sure that it's always consistent in my head and that I know where people are going and I know kind of like the layout of the office. Like the few times I've written like a higher concept fantasy, I drew like a map of the world, just so I can keep track of like the different land masses and what their names are and what their, you know, major like import and exports are. Again, it doesn't all come up in the story, but it's just as good to know, like for myself, in case I need to talk about, you know, some other country or some other island or peninsula or whatever. So in this story, like I said, this is a map of the office, and it just kind of shows like this is the first floor and like some of the things on the first floor, like the coffee house and the shops. And then we go up to the office floor, and this is just kind of a layout. The reception desk where my main character is, where her dad's office is, where the bathrooms are, where the mailroom is, and then also there's some elevators that go up to the suites, and so that way I can keep track of where those are. It's just like, it's fun, but it's also like really useful to have like some kind of map sometimes when you have like a lot of moving pieces. So these days, that's pretty much all I use this notebook for. It's just like any maps I need to do, or any like storyboarding or like outlines or flowcharts that I need to make, because drawing them out, it makes it more visual. And then the rest of the notes I take on my phone. And again, I don't always read those either. It just kind of depends on the story. Sometimes I feel like I need to read the notes, and sometimes I might get stuck somewhere, or sometimes I'm like, I feel like I'm forgetting something. So that's why I go ahead and take notes, and I go ahead and write things down, because not only may I forget something that's actually used for the story, but it also, the act of writing things down actually helps me remember the stuff that needs to stay. But anyway, that's a little bit about my note-taking process, and feel free to share your note-taking process, and I will see you guys in another video. Bye.